Hello, hello, and hello. Welcome to the Beth of Fresh Air. It's Friday, June 5th, 2026. We're still here. Blah. Is anyone going through hell? I posted this on my Facebook this week. Is anyone going through hell, but it suddenly looks brighter? Oh, and Miss Dawn Lester's in the house. Nice to see you. And Ronnie DeMont. So Micah's not here today. I hope it wasn't misleading when you saw my notes. This was inspired by Micah. So he's not going to be available for a little bit, and I'll be holding down the show today. Miss Quietly Content Bear is in the house, and JJ Hempcrete. Welcome, you guys. Glad to have you here. I am pretty excited about today's stream. It's kind of fascinating. You know, as long as things are interesting for me, I can go through a lot of stress. There's been a lot of upheaval. I woke up the other morning and I had super severe, actually through the night, I realized I had very severe vertigo, that kind where even when you roll over in bed, you get dizzy, never mind standing up or doing anything. Oh, Miss Ann McLeod, so great to connect with you this morning. Great to have you. Hell on the menu. Hell on the menu. Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know the punchline already, but that oddly enough is food. And we're going to be talking about a variety of kind of foods, especially that come in the form of story. So story is a big topic. It's really blown up in my mind. I know I'm not going to be able to cover absolutely everything that I planned to talk about today. And right away, I can think of at least 2 or 3 people for sure, Micah, to come on. Miss Audrey is looking. She says things are looking brighter, though. That's amazing. Good. Yeah, if we didn't have those moments of reprieve, then oh my goodness, what the heck would everyone would just go down and stay down. So yeah, this coming up for air is fantastic. And Quietly Contented Bear is looking forward to reading her book, all 688 or 80 pages. Maybe I could take it on because now I have at least listened to a 1,300 page book, and I'm on my second go now. I'm doing it by the audiobooks, All and Everything by Gurdjieff, which I didn't understand practically anything, especially the story. That should be the easiest part to get to follow along. To talk about that and how it really requires good listening to get stories. And what I'm noticing about this second read through, or the second go down with All and Everything, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, is that where before I wasn't hearing every word, now I can hear every word. I might have to, I can only take it in smaller chunks with that kind of concentration and focus, but so there's something different already happened from the first read. I did hear that there's you need 3 reads at least of that 1,300 page book. I'll get the actual book too, so I can underline the crap out of it. And thank you, Anne. That's very good. It takes one to know one, by the way. I always say that. So yeah, nice to have you guys. Thank you for joining me. I always want this to be interactive. That's why I do it as a live stream, not just talking on a video, which I do for my private podcast. And don't mind that. Oh, got notifications going off here, so I'm going to just turn that upside down, not look at it, and focus with you guys. So as you might have read in the notes, if you did, or my email, if you're on my email list, which book am I referring to? It's called All and Everything. That's one of Gurdjieff's. Another title for it is Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. And so, yeah, really amazing work, this one. It's you could say most writing, like my writing or anybody's writing, or stories or fiction, or even, all the nonfiction, that it's there's a certain level of subjectivity to it. That's just normal, natural. We've got to write, like I wrote my book from my perspective, and that's what it is. And then there's art that's being called objective art. We talked about it last week when I interviewed Mr. Roy Wooten and his buddy KG, who's like a total beautiful guy. I loved him immediately. And then Micah was on the panel there. And we talked about objective art. And the objective art has it's kind of like a good experiment in that It has a repeatable, demonstrable effect. It is transformational. Not just that you get new ideas, not just that you get some more information or some clues for your path, but its very work alters you. Kind of like going to an osteopath and they do something crazy to your body and you're like, what just happened? And something happened. It was done to you. It's not art, but it's one of those, I guess, objective, meaning the that it intersects with reality, not just the thought of reality. And that's where a lot of people get lost, in the thought of reality. And it's normal, it's natural, it is a modus operandi. That's kind of you could say our baseline or our default. And some of us get to a point where that default is not enough, that it lacks for meaning, it lacks for purpose, and it lacks for transformation. So, life just goes on in the way that it goes, and it's just the same, more or less, what do you call it, Groundhog Day? Same every day. I believe, in fact, I think I just learned that Groundhog Day was inspired by Gurdjieff's work. So that's very cool. I like that a lot. And here, let's just put this little banner up so you know where you are. The Beth of Fresh Air, episode 31, calling it Retell, pointing towards stories. And I want to shout out to a woman I worked with just after my mom died, when I was feeling completely lost and doing the healing work, but having no idea how to get back to my work. And I couldn't abandon it. I'm a self-employed person. I can't just I don't feel like doing that anymore. But I didn't know how to come back into the world. Same thing happened when my dad died. It just is a slate wiper. It cleaned the slate and left me unknowing of who I was, right? This is the state of humanity. If you claim you know who you are, then that's, chances are that's a thought of it. It's not to put anyone down, where this is the task at hand, to really truly know ourselves, to speak the truth. That doesn't mean telling everybody, like the government wants to know what size underwear you wear in the census. That's a joke and an exaggeration, but pretty close. You should see the census. It's like miles long of questions. It was never like that. They want to know every little thing about your life. It's very invasive. And Anne said, yeah, the book is on your list. Good for you. Don't. The way I got through that book is by being well prepared that I won't understand it. And so I just kept being okay not understanding. And Gurdjieff invents a lot of words to describe things that have no words, and places, and it's very cosmic. It's taking place in a whole universal system. It probably would challenge flat earthers a bit, I have to say, although I don't know. I won't get into that. It's a whole rabbit hole. So as long as you read it with the sense that you're not going to get it, then you can relax and just not get it, but yet it works on you. And now the second time I'm starting to get it, and I might even be able to follow the story. So how many times are you asking, who am I? Yeah, that's the golden question. Keep asking and keep going deeper. If the chances are, if you think you know who you are, that's not it. That's a thought, but it's not to pull the rug from out under anyone. It's just that if the hunger is there, and you do know that you don't really know who you are or where you are. This is like 57 years. Who am I? Where am I? Right? And it's very humbling, and that's a great place to be. So yeah, don't struggle with that book. That'll make you put it down in 5 minutes. Even the introduction, you'll walk away from it. The introduction was a 2-hour listen, and he acknowledged that was probably the longest introduction of any book on earth. And so you just take it little chunks at a time and just let it work on you. All right. So I was about to say I'd like to shout out to Kylie Slavic, who, after my mom died, was there as a coach. I had been following her a little bit. I am a business coach, although I'm not actively going, hey, there's not a lot of messaging about it. People come to me for that just because they know that, or they've got to know me in other ways, and they want to build their coaching business after they do some training with me or something like that. So I still do that, but it's not my heart and my soul and my passion. I'm almost ready to take it out of my bio. I still can do that, and I naturally do that. I was born and raised by my parents. I was going to say by a business. In a way, it was kind of, I was born and raised by a business more than my parents. God bless them anyway. And so Kylie came along, and her expertise is in communicating through story, which is so much more beautiful and artful and powerful, and actually has an effect. In her case, she was teaching it for the sake of business, and rather than just jumping out and going like, hey, I have a thing, buy my thing because I'm great. Like, who wants to do that? Mike and I've had so many conversations. He's got a list of qualifications right up to his armpits, but he has this thing of not wanting to promote himself. Everybody's like that, and it's good, but there are ways to use story. This was Kylie's platform, ways to use story to make it human, to make it so that people actually, to the degree that you know yourself, they can know you, and they can be transformed by your story. Never mind doing the thing that you're doing or wanting to do, them to do, then the story itself is transformational. And she was the first one to tell me that story is food. And you might, hearing that, go like, I don't know, I like beef and chicken and all these food for the body, but food for the soul. Who feeds on that? Is it the essence of who we are that can feed on that? I might guess that this would be a good question for Micah when he's back in the zone here with us. And so this food it's a nutrient, and it means that there's a hunger which could be conscious and it might be unconscious. Why do you guys think that you would suppress a hunger for something that, let's see if that's too open-ended of a question, but you can write in the chat, like, why, if you're hungry, that seems simple enough. Oh, you're hungry. It gives you a signal, I'm hungry. And it's time to eat. That's relatively simple, say, around food. Now, when 2020 hit and the pandemic came on, all of a sudden, that signal of my body didn't make me eat anymore. I was on a mission, and I was busy, and I felt extremely passionate. I felt driven. That's when my podcast exploded in volume. I think this is 418, by the way, since 2020 or since 2019 when I started the podcast. And I wanted to forget about eating. And I had this, I actually was able to unpack this unconscious story that was going on, because they were threatening us with starvation. The trucks are not going to come. The grocery stores won't have toilet paper. You can't eat. We did see, like there were supply chain issues, and who knows how they were manufactured and engineered to just look like, oh, the shelves are empty. People bought all the flour and all the sugar and a lot of canned goods. And so there was this internal thing like, oh, they're going to starve us. This is how that's how they take a big country like China down. That's why they eat everything in that country. They eat the nose and the ears and the tail. That's when they say nose to tail carnivore. It's like, okay, you have the nose and the tail and I'll eat the muscle meat. And so this threat of starvation definitely made its way into my unconscious, and I stopped really eating enough. I would eat some. It got to a point where my body would no longer give a normal hunger signal, and it would go into pain. It would go into some kind of alarm, some kind of thing that would force my attention back to it. And I was still hypnotized by fasting, as if that was a really good thing. There can be times for it. Okay. It's not a hardcore, this is bad for you. But for the most part, starving yourself is not a good idea. And I actually pulled something of what I've been hearing about, I might jump around a little bit today, but I was hearing Garrett talk about how, say there's a lot of people in the health world that say, don't eat carbs. One of my all-time best friends in the world that I love and adore and I would love to be with her every single day. She doesn't live here anymore. And she has that narrative, carbs bad, carbs equal fat. And I now know that carbs are not bad and carbs do not equal fat. Toxicity equals fat. Toxicity also equals too skinny. So that's kind of where I went when I flipped that switch. And it's not good. It's not a good thing. So this starvation thing, what did I do with that starvation of the food is I suppressed it. I put it out of my awareness until it came with much bigger signals telling me, like, you're in trouble. You got to eat. And I eventually did come back, and it was in my caffeine days. So I was used to making up for the energy that way. And I was in my insomnia days. So I was tired, wired. And it's like, so we suppress the hunger. The same thing with story. When you get hungry for story, if you can't really satisfy it, you're going to suppress the hunger and maybe not be aware of it. Now, what's more common with the story thing is that we go looking for a whatever, some kind of story, some version, right? Gossip can be a story. There's a storyline, there's people, there's characters, there's a plot that it probably had a beginning of some kind, might not have an ending yet, but it's still a followable menu kind of to track. And a lot of people in the truth community end up using their, like the influencers out there that are telling us what's wrong every day, what's frightening every day, how we're going to die soon. I get an email from somebody every at least couple of days, and the headline, I'm not sure why I stay on it. I'm a spectator at this point, just watching it. And it's doom every time, every single time, doom, 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 doom. And I've become kind of immune, and I won't take part in it because, yes, there's a sort of story of doom in there, and it will, in a very fake or pseudo way, satisfy that hunger, that starvation. But what does it leave you with? Indigestion. It leaves you with toxicity. Your body's full of fear. Don't we have enough programs already to deal with? It causes you to relayer programs, which is what suppression all is. And so over the course of the last 6 years, I have learned to take in less and less and less and less. And only when I want to, when I feel like I really need to know something, because it's not about being an ostrich in any way at all. And that's why I have completely pivoted, much more than sharing about what's wrong, to solutions and breakthroughs and Beth of Fresh Air, that, this is a different kind of food that maybe people could make use of. Hello, Wooden. Nice to see you on Facebook. You said you only wanted to eat once a day for many months now. You lost weight. Your blood pressure is almost normal again. It's been a blessing, and you're looking and feeling great. Fantastic. Good for you. Because in health, there's no protocols. I can't sit and tell you what's good and what's wrong. If that's working for you, that's amazing, and all the power to you. So that's fantastic. And so here's something so interesting. I've been learning about nickel toxicity in the last, now going on 5 weeks with Garrett. This was almost an accidental discovery, just through a couple of people in his world that had a nickel allergy, and they went on low nickel diets, and they got some immediate, very amazing results, like eczema went away, conditions disappeared, things like that. And so it motivated him to begin really researching and getting into this metal that's never named. Do you ever hear about it? Am I in danger even talking about it? Is he in danger? There could come a time where I'm starting to think like that. And so I hope I don't mangle the science, but I was kind of proud of myself. I've been learning the biochemistry of things. And our bodies have a relationship to metals. And there's a process called DMT. This is not for getting high. This is a divalent metal transfer process in your system. And it requires metal in order to conduct electricity into the body to bring, to now I'll just make shit up if I try to say what that is, distribute energy or something like that, then I'm getting woo. But this DMT, if it can't get a good metal like zinc, it's going to accept any metal for that transfer that is divalent, meaning it's a +2 charge. And so what does it pick up? It picks up all kinds of garbage. It picks up lead, it picks up nickel, it picks up copper. And because those are all divalent, pardon me. But there's a difference between bi and di. And then so that was so fascinating as a life lesson to watch, that there's a process in us that it's like, okay, I need a zinc, can't get a zinc. I'll take that garbage metal, even though it's totally poisonous, but because that causes the being not to die soon for lack of that transfer, then it will just do it, and I thought right away of people out there that might live on junk food and fast food, although that's like so much more expensive than real food these days. And, their bodies are desperate for something, and it will accept the fake food in lieu of dying. And then so if you demonize carbs and you think carbs are all bad and wrong, guess how long your brain won't live without glucose? Does anybody know? Not long. Not long at all. So you guys can vote in the chat on that. And, so this is like story. This is an exactly beautiful metaphor for story, that we will take crap in place of what could otherwise be something that you could grow and feed and learn on. And so, that hunger for going and watching the doom porn of the day, how they're trying to kill us today, that unfortunately, it's just like putting excuse my language, shit metal in the DMT transfer. And then you have to suffer it. You have to deal with, like I said, the toxicity of that. So story is non-negotiable. It's going to be part of your diet. We live on it. And, you can see just through the eyes of children, for example, how can you put a child to bed without a bedtime story? Barely, right? That there might be some that don't like stories, but I've never come across a single child that wasn't hungry for stories. Can I tell you a story? Who says no? My son did finally. I remember there was a time when Google says 46 minutes. There you go. She looked it up like a good scientist rather than guessing. Interesting. I have 30 to 60 minutes, but 4 to 6 minutes could also be true. So my search might have lied to me, but it's short, right? That's not a long time. So if you have any sense that carbs are bad, just let that go. The brain is requiring of that molecule, and it doesn't care how it's going to get it, even though there can be consequences for that. Let's see if I can go back to where I was. And yeah, children and the hunger for stories, they need that. They know they need that, and they're going to get that. My son did finally. I remember the night that I said, "Could I read you a story?" And he was like, "No, Mama." He was sick of me because maybe I was dramatizing it. Sometimes I would sing those books for fun. I would just sing do a melody to the words. And I was maybe potentially entertaining myself more than my son. And then he's like, no, we're done with the stories. And that was fine. And, social media definitely is trying to satisfy that. Why do they call the exact kind of post a story? You want to post that to your story. So they know very well that story is like absolutely non-negotiable need of a human. And that's what draws you into watching story after story after story after story after story. And it's not to say they're all bad. I love seeing stories of my friends. I get to catch up with them. I get to stay in tune with where they're at. So there's nothing evil about it. It's just the recognition that it's something that y'all need in your life. And Jillian is listening at double speed. Good on you. Let us know when you get to the present moments. That's fun. And hello, Michelle Lucky. Nice to have you here. Getting good in filtering the necessary information out of the doom stories. And that's okay that you have to go. Enjoy. Maybe you can come back and hear the rest later. So yeah, we have to become filters. And that's actually one thing that Garrett says about your air quality, that if you don't have a filter, you are the filter, right? Fish in water, they're the filter of the water. If the water is poisonous, don't eat those fish, poor things. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Here's my my story. I don't usually talk about these things in public, but frankly, I realized the other day that it would be harder not to. And so it's looking like I'm going to have to move out of my space that I've been in for 15 years or something like that. Got very comfortable here. I knew that my time was limited in the city. Everybody knows the city is a little bit less of a place to be. There's all kinds of things wrong in the country too, where they're building all of the data centers is another thing. So is there really going to be a place to be? But yeah, so just letting you guys know, I'm looking for a home. And so anybody in the zone or even out of the zone that happens to know about something, I want to stay close to my son, so I'm not really going to get further than a 20 minutes or 20 or 30 minute drive away from him. And even that feels like a really far place, but just putting it out to my network if anybody is knowing of anything, and you can let me know. So that's my sad story right there. And so then, yeah, the craving for story, it's real. And if you can do the filtering and discriminate and really just know that, okay, this is just like the foods that you would choose. You have to be as discriminating about the stories that you take in as you are about the food that you take in, if you are discriminating, which is the hope, of course. That's, how can you do anything that without discrimination? That's a thing. So one of the other aspects of story is how it gets used internally as a way to what I can call circle the drain. So I've worked with people one-on-one and in groups for a really long time and trained coaches since 2020. And so one of the things I've noticed, and this is no slight on anybody, and I don't want anybody I've worked with that might be hearing this or hearing this later, I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to apologize. I don't want people do apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to say this thing first. And you don't have to at all. I'm not the story police, but I'm extremely aware how we can use our personal stories in order to avoid the elephant in the room. And what is the elephant in the room is the pain, right? The pain of existence, the pain of not existing, the fear of not existing, and it's endless. Everything Buddha said, everything is pain. He was right. He was really right. And it's not to say there isn't hope and there isn't freedom. There is. This is real. And this is something, absolutely worth working for. But when there's a beast in the room I'll call it a program, and it's sitting there yelling at you softly or quietly, and it's threatening you, saying that you're not going to survive, that you can't get in control of something, that nobody loves you, or whatever. There's a million variations of that. That's sort of oversimplified, but that's the crux of it. And so if you are noticing that you have one of those running, We all do, and multiple layers. So you don't have to be embarrassed like, oh my God, I have a program. How embarrassing. No, it's everybody. It's universal. And as soon as you see it, and I'll say it as if I'm personifying it. It's not a person. It's a thing. It's a mechanism. It's really a nothing, but whoa, when you give it your life energy, when you feed that, then it has a lot of stories to tell. And, it's as if the program knows that you're onto it, and it will start weaving a narrative around it. That's why I call it kind of circling the drain. And the story can go around and around and around. You can know that you're doing this because you've heard the story before. Now, you might not be aware of that. How many times have you told your friend a story and they say to you, oh yeah, you already told me that? There are some people I talk to, and I'll be such a pain in the ass, and I'll say it nicely and kindly and be loving, but, oh yeah, I remember you told me that. Oh yeah, I remember you told me that. Oh yeah, I remember hearing that. Right. Yes, you told me that. And, it's because we don't hear ourselves. We don't hear our own stories. We don't hear what we're saying. And that's why it's really good to get reflection and maybe be surrounded by people who might be a little bit more honest, but hopefully loving. And so story can be something that we use, right, from a totally different perspective of it. Now, is it food? Again, it's fake food. It's food for you, but it's fake food. It's pseudo food. It's not really nourishing. It's stopping you from feeding, it feeds, some people could say it simplistically, it's feeding the ego and starving the essence, right? And hello, Mike New. Great to have you in the room. He says, I'm infamous to my wife for repeating stories. There you go. So yeah, a married couple will definitely notice that about each other. And I do it to my son all the time. And sometimes, I'm not circling the drain or trying to avoid anything. I'm just excited to share a story with him. And he's like, yeah, I heard that, Mama. You already told me that, kind of thing. So I'm trying to get better at remembering what I already said to him. And frankly, stories can be retold. They are meant. That's why I called this stream Retell, because stories are a beautiful thing. I actually took a course in my anthropology degree on, was it the anthropology of story or something? I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was focused on that and the hero's journey. Of course, that's the epic story, the big story of all stories that really every story is some version of. And they taught me that the retelling of the story is something that is in itself transformational, unless the unconscious will is that story doesn't change. So I'll use an example. There could be something that happened in my past. Maybe I got beat up, I got kicked around, I got abused by a guru. This is another story I might share today. And I was luckily not abused by a guru, but I know people who were really, really terribly abused by gurus, or by a guru. And I'm just hearing some of the fallout about that right now. I might say more about that. And so the story might go that, this bad guy, and he was a bad guy. That's not dishonest, but this bad guy hurt me, did bad things to me. He, yeah, how much to share here? I'm not sure exactly, but the guy did bad things. Now I'm wounded and I have trouble and I can't be responsible because I always have PTSD about that, and I'm on medication, and that makes me not think straight, and so I can't be responsible for myself, and therefore I need to be taken care of. I'm just painting a random picture here. And so that story could get retold over and over, and what it does, it might evolve and transform over time, but if it's being driven by programming, then that story will likely just circle, not spiral and change, but it will circle. Even the spiral is not really changing it, but it gives it more potential for a real transformation. And so yeah, the going in circles with the stories that are not in your best interest, right? If you keep telling the story to yourself and others that you're the victim, well, everybody believes you. I often have said that, everything is listening to you. And if you say, "Oh yeah, I'm a victim and I've been put down in that victim mode," exactly, that kind of story keeps people in victim mode, Don. And then it becomes more and more true. You dig your heels and you create a groove. Mike has talked about the grooves on a record and how that's like sort of normal existence when we're just simply following the grooves. We're following the storyline that already exists, even if it hurts us, even if it sets us back and gives us less than nothing, leaves us more empty than when we came. So that is something to watch for. You'll probably watch for it more easily in other people. You might see that, or you might even be able to start watching for it in yourself. What are the disempowering stories that you make up? Now, on the other side of the spectrum, of the victim spectrum, there might be the more, I don't know, the word megalomania comes to mind, where the story is an empowering story. I just had somebody on my Facebook post about, are you going through hell? Come and go, "Oh no, I'm not going through hell because I'm God, I'm the creator, I'm making all of my life circumstances, and I have no problems." And I just left that one. It was tempting to, part of me wanted to poke holes in that very fragile reality that's belief and story based and is not actually true. We all want to believe that, right? That seems more fun and it sounds more empowering, but it's actually it's as disempowering as the victim side is, because you believe it and you'll hold on to it, and it's literally run by fear programming as well. It just has a different expression on the scale. It's just higher up the scale. It's the same damn scale. So the whole scale is programmed. And so, but you can't run around poking holes in people's reality. Sometimes, I mean, it can be even so strong that if you manage to cut somebody's head off, they might lose it. They might not be able to cope. So, I've been out of that business of pulling the rug out from underneath people in a long time. It's one of the reasons I became a coach, so that people have to actually sign up. They have to commit. They have to invest themselves. And then so by the time they commit and they sign up and they invest, they're much less likely to spend their investment in just cycling the stories. So that all to say is different from retell. Retell is when you take a story that does exist and you allow it in the retelling to evolve. So, some people might get stuck with, if they thought about writing a memoir, that they've had, an interesting, eventful life, and they might get stuck in this place of going, well, I have to make it realistic, and it has to go in order, and it has to, reflect the actual reality of things. And so it's not wrong. Neither do you want to just lie and say things happened that didn't happen. This would be very a different kind of a thing altogether. But if you allow yourself to tell that story, so this is in a way what I've been doing for going on, it's at least 25 years, maybe more, since I survived cancer. I've been telling that story. I remember the first time I told that story to a small audience that came out to a bookstore to hear me talk. And I got brave and I told this story of what I had been through not that long ago either, right? My hair was still pretty darn short. I put myself on a bunch of different stages and I just started telling my story. There was one time I told my story and I sang at a nurses oncology conference when I had half an inch of hair. I'd just come out of devastating chemo, and I'd been through extremely life-changing, life-altering experiences that gave me my life back. And they invited me to come and speak at this conference. There was not a dry eye in the room, let's say. And it's not because I'm so incredibly compelling, but because they only see death and devastation. Oh, somebody, Emil, is getting shitty audio. Anyone else getting shitty audio? My mic is good. And let me just see. That is shitty audio. Thank you. What happened to my mic? Yeah. My mic is missing. Okay. It is shitty audio. How long have I been doing that? Okay. You dumb thing. Okay, give me, the audio's fine. At least you can hear it. Yeah, it shouldn't be that bad. It's coming from my mic. Just distant. Okay, yeah, because you probably hear me better now when I speak this way. Okay, I'm unplugging, and I'm going to plug it back in and see if it registers on StreamYard. Because I don't like shitty audio. Come on. You came out of there. You're going to go back in there. Nope. Got the wrong there. And let's see if now. Okay, well, it's going to be shitty audio today. I'll speak up a little bit. All right. Bear with me. Some technical trouble. If I can get this thing to move any closer. I don't think so. It's all what it is. Okay, I'm just going to speak up a little bit. Is that better? Sorry, you guys. The mic doesn't need to be in my face anymore. It's not helping. Okay, good to know. What the heck? I want to look at my settings quick and see if it can register. Microphone. Bear with me for a minute. Here we go. Does it? No, maybe my mic died and you hear me fine. Okay. It's just a slightly subpar. Yeah. Okay. My mic may have died an ugly death, or it got accidentally unplugged, or my dongle is dead and the volume's okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'm going to let it go for now. We'll look at that later. Okay. Where the heck was I? Yeah. So the stories evolve, and it's a beautiful thing. It's amazing. My story of me going through what I went through has changed. Now, again, it's not about fudging the facts, but it's different elements come forward, and things I wasn't even considering to be relevant might pop in a certain kind of a context, depending on who I'm talking to and what they need to hear. Or, like what they, thank you, Allie, I appreciate it. Sounded good to you. And so that is the growth. Like that is to me, the essence growing through the story when you retell it, especially a story. Does anyone have a story that they'd rather not tell? When, we have things that maybe you've been through, that I went through. It was, it was a devastating time. It was a total fail, absolute breakdown. I lost everything. I lost my house. I lost my possessions. I lost my ability to just independently take care of myself. It was major. And most people, when they go through those kind of things, they just want to go go off into private to heal all of that stuff, which is good, actually. That you don't tell a story while you are still trying to figure out the ending. But once you got to the ending, meaning you solved it, that you overcame the challenge, I got my life back, then immediately I wanted to tell that story. And I remember after that first couple of talks, and someone came to me and they had been profoundly affected by hearing my story. And they didn't explain why, or what it was for them. They probably didn't know. It's got a lot of code in terms of, like, not I'm giving code, but stories are coded. They are the hero's journey. They're a trajectory. This is why I recommend only sharing the stories where you did have a solution of some kind, where it came to a resolution. Because when you tell stories that don't have a resolution, all you're actually really doing is traumatizing people. And they'll feel sorry for you. They will usually come running after you and say, "Oh, I can fix you. You have a problem. I know how to fix you." Do you have any friends like that run after you? And when you go to podcast, and it can be like, quite a mess of people coming forward with those kind of things. And that's not productive for them, and it's not productive for you at all. So, but there was this urge I had overcome. I lived when I was told I wouldn't live. And so I started telling this story, and it became part of my life and my world. It took me 20 years, but I wrote a whole book on it. And, I'll still tell that. If somebody asks, I will tell that story. They're always like, "Oh, do you mind sharing about that?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And through the evolution of that story, I have learned, I have grown. And it has been from the what people share with me and tell me about it, it's been food for them as well. So it needs to be retold. That's how stories are passed on through generations. This was the anthropology course, that there was certain knowledge about cultures, about, say an indigenous culture, that was only passed on through the oral tradition. Oral tradition is not like bullet points of facts and information. Oral tradition is story. So, stories of mythologies. I particularly enjoyed work on the mythologies around the trickster archetype. The trickster is a very fascinating character. I for sure have some trickster in me. They're also known as the contrary. And there's all of these stories from particularly, I think we were studying Cree stories, or could have come from all kinds of indigenous sources at the time, and cross-culturally too, because that's anthropology's jam, is comparing all those stories. And there's tricksters in every culture, and they're busy doing the wrong things, right? So the contrary will do the thing that you're not supposed to do, and partly to teach everybody what not to do. So they can show you through their bad behavior that here's how you don't act in this culture. See, he acted out of what he was supposed to do, and then he got in trouble and no one liked him, or whatever the kind of, however the story went. The trickster stories are amazing. You could probably find a whole bunch of them. And Jillian, did you come to regular time now? If we bring the story up to our awareness, there can be real value in the story. It's the unconscious stories and lies that hook us. Bingo, right? You said it. That's the whole thing. The unconscious stories, and then the stories that are conscious. And that's amazing to hear. Dawn, me sharing my story encouraged her to share hers. Wow, that's fabulous to hear. Thank you so much. And yes, your story must be heard. We'll have to have you on for another story stream. I would love that. And Jackie K is here in the room. Nice, and sound is perfect. Excellent. Okay, I'll let that completely go for the time now. So I should tell you, I told you at the beginning, Micah Ellers, who I've been streaming quite a bit with, I've been teaching with. We just finished the End of the False Self course. Him and I have had a lot of exchanges. We're in the process of reading a book at the same time and discussing it, just through text and voicemails and the odd call and stuff like that. And he's definitely a brother. And over the months that I first was working with him, and then he became more of a colleague, I was getting little bits and pieces of his story, right? Of his background, where he's come from. And anybody that has any level of remarkability about them, and Micah definitely does. If people, if you haven't heard him speak, I do recommend any one of the live streams that I did with him in the House of Free Will, which is the private podcast. I think we did 8 or more snippets with him included. And for the most part, he's always only talking about Gurdjieff's work and the knowledge of self-remembering, which is all very important and super interesting to me. But I kept thinking, like, I wonder what's in the background. How did this person get to this place in their life where they have so much knowledge, and not just knowledge, but wisdom that actually does add up and create transformation and has transformed him, right? So my anthropology mind goes, yeah, like, what's the backstory? And at our last End of the False Self class, shout out to you if you listen to this or you're listening, that she wanted to know Micah's story. She asked explicitly, could you share your story of how you've come through this work and what brought you to this work? And I have tried a little bit here and there with him, and I wasn't really quite getting the story. Neither was he hiding it, right? So it was, in his case, it wasn't like, oh, I'm so embarrassed about my story. It's just that, I don't know, we have a world that is disinterested, and it takes a little bit of effort to be interested in somebody's story. I mean, this is amazing for me. I'm a podcaster. I get to hear people's stories. I get to ask them the questions about their stories. And that's food for me, if you haven't noticed, right? Like that's so cool. And so she asked him in class, and he gave a really amazing answer, but that it wasn't his story. It was teaching. It was knowledge. It was good and useful and excellent, but it still wasn't his story. So I was kind of pressing him a little bit. And so he agreed to sit down and have a conversation with me. And then he agreed to let me record it. And then so we did record it. And it was a wow, you guys. And I know that was just the tip of the iceberg, that the volume of it is actually much greater, that, there's way more he didn't say than what he did say. His memoir would probably be 1,300 pages, I have to say. He's been through a lot, and it's intense. So this conversation will not be in the public. It's not going to be live streamed. It's not going to be on my website. It's not going to be on social media. But we have decided, and he agreed, that we would let people hear it who already have an interest in self-remembering. They have an interest in freedom. They have an interest in doing the work, the conscious labor of waking up. And so if that's you out there, and you maybe have tuned in with Micah, and you also love Micah like we do, and you want to hear that story, please do. Now, if you're already on my email and you got on my email list and you got the notice about this live stream, I did put a link in there so that you can get that in the next day or so. I'm just going to go through it and maybe clean it up a little bit, because I goofed and had my mic off for some time. I don't know. I might not care about that either. Who cares? And it really is compelling. I literally sat on the edge of my seat and listen to this. I think it was only 45 minutes or so that we went, because, like I said, it could have gone on and on, but, and it filled in a lot of blanks about why is this individual so gifted and so learned and so humble. And, so this was fascinating to me. So if you would like to say you're not already on my email list, what you could do is go to my website. You could take 10 minutes to do an archetype quiz. That will get you into the queue, and I will send another email offering to hook you up with that. So I don't know if I'll end up with a landing page for this or not, or anything like that, if I have the bandwidth, but you can email me, beth@bethmartins.com. I won't put it in the chat because the bots will grab it. You can send me a message at my website, anything, or I will get a link to the King Hero quiz, so you guys can do that if you haven't already. And then we're going by the honor system, because these days, even a private video, somehow you can screen record it or whatever, and you might find a way to share it. But please don't. This is just, for this time. There might come a time where he wants to go more public with that story, but for now, it's for people who genuinely want to self-remember. If you know what that means, self-remembering means you know yourself, you know who you are, you know your tendencies, you know how you go into the unconscious, not just that you do that, but you can see the mechanisms, you can see the programming, you can see what he and Gurdjieff call false personalities, was the whole course that we just did. And if you know inside yourself that you're here to break through and that stuff and gain greater freedom, greater agency, then this will be extremely informing to you. And go back to a few comments here. Let's see, Jillian, did I already, sharing of story can be helpful if the one who hears chooses to be inspired. Yeah, so that's an actually really interesting point, Jillian, that when you share a story, you have no control about who's hearing it. You don't know if they're listening. Like there's so many times when I've maybe told a story to my son and I cue in that he wasn't listening. And at the end, when I stop talking, he like comes up with a false personality to like pretend he's interested, but just try to like, oh, are you talking about mom? And he trained himself not to listen to me as a child, right? So this is built in. And you just have no idea. Every time you tell your story, it might fall on deaf ears. It might. Like a metaphor for that, I've got 2 great big elm trees outside my place here. And this is the month when they produce seed. And we had some big winds and big rains, and like kaboom, it's almost like snow, the layers of seed that are there. And you think about how many seeds even one tree produced. I don't know, like tens of thousands. Is there a million? I don't know. I've never tried to count, of course. And how many of those seeds are going to become an elm tree? Probably here in the city, 0. There might be 1. It might turn into a weed out front and someone's going to just come and yank it when it's a couple of inches tall or something like that. You know, in the wild, there might be a handful of those that would find the right place in the ground, that would be all the right conditions, everything conspiring for that seed to become an elm tree one day, right, in its grandiosity. And so that's how it is when you get brave enough to tell your story and you speak and you have the will to share. You are nourished, and then you have some nourishment to pass on. You don't know who's going to hear it, how they're going to receive it. You don't know if they're going to like it, if they're going to hate it, if they're going to reject you, if they're going to judge you. I had a fantastic coach, and they said, treat it that every time you get on stage, don't be afraid that they're going to judge you. Know that they're going to judge you. Just know that. They are going to judge your hair and your shoes, she would say, and they're going to judge what you say, and they're going to judge how you say it, and they're going to, and just get over it, right? That's just going to happen. You can never control. I'm sure you already know all of this, Jillian. I'm just using it as an opportunity to riff, but that's a lot of people won't tell their story because they're afraid of how it's going to be received or not received. And this is a very unnecessary obstacle to have in your way. That maybe you throw one seed, or you throw a bunch of seeds out. I think the metaphor starts falling apart here, but I will always, here's my trick as a public speaker, that say I'm going to be speaking to 100 people or 200 people or something. I will fashion my talk for one person who can receive, who can hear, who is hungry to self-remember, who's brave enough to feel their feelings, and that's no little thing. Who wants to learn, who wants support. I will speak directly to them. And I don't care if there's 1 out of 200 or 1 out of, I've never spoke to 2,000. I've sung to larger crowds, but not spoke. And so I feel if I reached that one person, that was a total success. Now, would I leave everybody in the dust? No, that would be weird. But I won't reserve myself. I won't dumb down my talk and miss the one right person and gain the 199 wrong people. That's no favor to them, and that's no favor to you where you're at. So yeah, it's a really great thing to overcome the fear of, if you have that fear, even if you don't plan on doing public speaking in your work or anything like that. But it's such a formidable fear. It's a really great one to get past. And here's another tip, which Jillian, not even asking for tips, but maybe for anybody, is that the when I'm preparing a presentation of some kind, I try not to focus on, will they like me? Do I look good enough? Although, I'm certainly vain enough not to come, yeah. Anyway, I wish I was. I wish I wasn't. In a way, I could just show up in my pajamas. But there's something, I don't know. It just seems it's not really my thing. But here's the bottom line: is I want to have more of my attention on you guys than I have on myself. Do I look good? Do I sound good? Am I making sense? Am I being funny? Am I right? And as long as I'm paying attention to you, then I'm off the hook. I don't have my attention on myself. I'm not self-conscious. I can much more easily be myself. I can read the room. I can read the people. I can be there for them where they're at. So that's a very big key turner that I learned early on in my days. And so I don't know if anyone can make use of that, but I'm way behind on the chats now, but I like them anyway. Mike said, I always learn something when I share my story with another. There's always insight I couldn't gain on my own, right? So that's I want to say therapeutic. That's a weird word, but there's a transformational factor there and that's why, you can't, we're not like isolated lone wolves or lone lions, pride animals like that. We're not like that. We do need to share our story at times. And sometimes clients, they need to just come and tell me what's going on, and that's okay. It's not a problem. But if they can use the story as a way to get to the unconscious part of the story where they're unnecessarily suffering, then for sure we're going right there. If you can go right there, I can go right there, and you don't necessarily need the story, but the story can come. So Emil asked, does the trickster have anything to do with the obsessions of acts like dyeing of hair while aging, plastic surgery? Maybe in a sick and weird, twisted way, possibly. Now the trickster, say in my archetype wheel, if you want to call it that, on the journey archetypes, is a version of the alchemist. So the trickster is way up the scale, you could call it. Now that doesn't make it better than everything that came before it, but it does point to a level of development. Now when you talk to me about dyeing hair like aging, so that's a lover thing. That's that. I went for a haircut recently. Did you notice? And the first thing she told me is that I had gray hair, and I'm like, I still have this self-image that my hair is blonde. In fact, I look at the screen right now, and it looks kind of blonde. And yes, there is gray hair in there, and that's how blondes go gray. It's it'll just be white one day or something like that, or maybe not, because I'm detoxing nickel, and maybe my hair doesn't have to go gray. Maybe I'm going to get more blonde hair. So yeah, that obsession, when you use the word obsession, that's very lover. That's a lover word right there. One of the key words, actually. If there's two lover words, that's one of them. And then plastic surgery. Yeah. So that's all lover. That I don't see trickster in that. Trickster is much more alchemy. Yeah. So just so you know. And Miss Artist Cedar is in the house. Nice to my Artist Seer, not Cedar. That's different. Hugs to you as well. And so here is the link, by the way. I put that in the chat for the quiz sign up. If you'd like to hear Micah's story, then that's how we can get connected today. I don't have a link for that. If you're not already on my list, then I don't have a way to send that to you, but that's how you can get on there and learn your archetype. Maybe you're a lover that is obsessed and worried about aging, and maybe is thinking about plastic surgery or dyeing your hair or something like that. And all the women in my life, they all dyed their hair. They all did that, right? So I'm pretty off topic right now, but Jillian said, I've watched stories sink folks in victimhood probably most strongly in patient support groups where folks with a particular condition or experience are encouraged to share. Yeah. So, right, like you look at any recovery program, too bad they call it that, because it sometimes doesn't lead there. It can be very, very good for people. But if you've ever been in those circles, you know, how do they open their mouth? How do they start talking and presenting? I'm an alcoholic. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I'm a, there's other names. It's even expanded since I was a child or part of any of those kind of things. So their story starts with, I'm broken. I'm this, I'm that. And, it is true. It is true, right? Like there is something, but so it's not about going like instead of I'm an alcoholic would be like, I'm perfectly healed. That might be another lie, another fictitious story. You're actually in a way better off with I'm an alcoholic now that I'm thinking through it out loud, because there's a humility in that rather than saying like, oh, I'm all done, I create my reality, everything's so perfect, when it's not. That's like what is my friend on Facebook calls it a Delulu bubble, like an illusion bubble. And so yeah, but that there, and then here's the big key is identification, right? They identify as an addict. There's a bunch of people, the woman identifies as man, and the man identifies as a child, and look at all of this contortion and disnatured, that actually isn't reflected in reality. I don't care what you identify with. There's still a reality of who you are. You're still a man, you're still a woman, you're still a child. You can't just fake your way out of that. Now, having said that, if I have trouble finding a place to live, you're going to start hearing me talk with an Indian accent. I might try that. I've been seeing some memes go around, and I'm going to go and I'm going to try to identify as an East Indian so that I can have a place to live, because they seem to get all the places. And I'll just stop talking about that now, because who knows how censorable that kind of thing is. But anyway, there's my terrible sense of humor there. And people traded stories and symptoms. And it becomes a currency, Jillian. It becomes a currency. You tell me something terrible about yourself, and I'll tell you something terrible about myself. I think a lot of couples end up going on this kind of currency, and then what happens? They break up, and that currency then becomes ammunition. Oh, well, he told me that he secretly was in love with his mother, something like that. And then they tell everybody, and they shame them, and they, rake them over the coals, and so it becomes, it's now motive matters. What is the motive? Because people share their trauma stories as a way to stay traumatized. And now they don't know that. This is all unconscious. You can never assume consciousness is the driver of that. It's always going to be an unconscious driver. That's why I talk programming. These are the ultimate unconscious drivers. They are the roots of all of the drivers. And so is your currency fear? Then you're going to let your programming tell the story. And there's only one thing worse than being afraid. It's being afraid and alone. So afraid people like to go when they tell the scary story, and they want the other person to be afraid. I know I was like that with my coach in 2020 when my eyes opened to what was happening, and I was trying to open her eyes to what was happening. There was a lot of that. Like I was like Mrs. Can Opener, trying to open everybody's cans. And I'm going like, but Anna, everybody's going to have to line up for food. And we, the government's going to control everything. And she's like, yeah, that's where I came from. She came from a communist country. She grew up in food lines, and she's like, yeah, whatever. Like she would not let me make her afraid. Good for her. That was good on her. And yeah, so that's how we try to infect each other with our terrible, scary stories. And hello, Lori Lane. Nice to see you and have you here. Great advice for speaking to a group, or really for general conversation. Focus on the other person. 100%. And then what happens when you listen to the or I just gave the punchline away, but when you focus on the other person, you're also going to be listening to them. And even if they're not speaking, say you're giving a talk, there's all kinds of code coming, right? They're tuning into you. You can catch the vibe. You can see, even if you can't see them. This was one of the things about being a performer, that you get on stage and the lights are on you and you can't even see them. So I was used to giving talks in smaller places where I could always see the people, and I could receive the code, and I could see, are they engaging? Are they getting something? Or do they all have a big question mark on their mind? Or they're like, who is she? Or something like that. Like I would really be able to play off that and use that. And then I had to learn to do it sometimes from bigger stages where I can't see the people, and I had to feel it. And just, then it's a much more kind of psychic thing. But yeah, like, and even if it's a one-on-one conversation with your friend, devoting your attention to them, not wondering if you're going to say the right thing. This has come up for me as a tiny bit of a theme even today, where there are situations that, here I'll describe this in one of the end of the fall self classes. I think it was the last one. And I participated in 2 of the role-playing exercises, and they're just total improv. So they're not scripted. You have no idea what you're going to say. Nobody knows what you're going to say. You don't know what they're going to say. You get a scenario. Mike is really good at inventing scenarios to bring out certain kind of qualities. And so in both cases, I had to play somebody that's not myself, not Beth Martins, not a coach, not this. And they told me their scenarios, they told me, were both things that I literally didn't know what to say. And everybody could tell I didn't know what to say, which was funny when we debriefed about it after. They could, and it's not like me. I usually find something to say. I can do a podcast for 2 hours on my own and keep saying stuff. And you ask me a question in my class, I know what I will respond. I will have something to say. You ask me my opinion about anything, I can give you my opinion. And I was like literally stumped. So instead of being honest in that moment and telling the story that I don't know what to say, I'm sorry you're suffering, but I don't know what to say. That would have been the bald-faced truth of it. Instead, I started making shit up and grasping at, my coach wanted to get in there so bad and help them. But I'm not playing a coach, so that wouldn't be an authentic role. So it was fascinating to watch. I remember it was, I don't know, could have been 8 or 12 hours after the class. And my mind was just naturally replaying the story of it. And I had this huge aha, about, now that doesn't happen to me as a coach because I'm in that role. The people who hire me, they want me to be in that role. And that's an acceptable relationship, and it works beautifully. Like it works amazing. But in this case, that wasn't the agreement. So yeah, and it's all about, another really big part of that, Lori, if I'm still talking to you about this, is or anybody who can take it in, is that telling the truth and being honest, not telling them the truth about what you think of them, or what their problem is. That a lot of people think honesty means, I'll be honest with you and I'll tell you that you're stupid or something like that. That's not honesty. That's not honesty. But to just say like, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm really feeling sorry for what you're going through, but I don't have a hot clue what to say. And I'm sorry for that too. Or, whatever is authentic, then that's true, real connection, and might very well lead to something. So I'm a little off topic on that, but it was still a very cool experience. And you might notice I tell a lot of stories here. And our words are uttered as our own. They are received as someone else's. maybe in perception. And yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure. So there's an integration, there's a hearing. Sometimes people will say that, especially after working with me for some time, that they actually hear my voice in their head when they are struggling or challenged or suffering. They'll actually hear my voice. And, could you let it go? They might hear it, because I say that a lot. And so, yeah, and I've had that too, where I've got other people's voices in my head, and hopefully in a helpful way, not like a, kind of creepy kind of way. And yeah, the I'm done is a complete bypass. Anybody who says they're done, it's just like the clear evidence they're not done. I don't think you get done here, unfortunately. I might have at a time believed that you could, but I don't think so. But we can get much greater agency, much. And yeah, the trauma bonds. I know a lot of my trauma bonding friends are gone. They're just gone. It didn't work out. Emil said, one point is that an alcoholic often denies they have a problem. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. That's the first line, admitting you have a problem. If you can't get there, it's the exact same with everything, right? Alcoholism might be just an extreme of the same thing that everybody's going through. And yeah, so if you can't say that, I don't know, this was Gurdjieff's way to say it, like that we might go around saying, I know, and I do. And he will say, like, you don't know and you can't do. And if you're in that place where you're denying, then that's going to be an offense to you. And but if you're hungry for knowledge and awakening, then that will be an opening for you. So that's why they confess. They don't necessarily identify as an alcoholic, but the process starts with admitting an issue. Okay, I get it. I kind of said that earlier too, Emil. Yeah, I get that. And infecting each other with fear. Yep, that's what it can be. Absolutely. So let me see if there's any other angles. There's a lot of angles. There was, say, in the along the line of people thinking that no one wants to hear their story. And my family's business before I left in 1999, I think is when I finally left, 98, 99. And we had been part of a women's lecture series that came through. As a fancy producer out of Toronto hired our firm to run his Winnipeg events. And it was actually pretty exciting for me because I got to meet some, like, the anticipation of it was really exciting. I got to meet women like, whether you like them or not, but the Duchess of York was here with her entourage of 97 people in the helicopter. We had Mary Tyler Moore and Lauren Bacall, and there was just a raft of them. I think there was 20 speakers over 4 years, and they were all women. And they would come and they would tell their stories, not teaching, not, pontificating, not telling you theory or, all of that kind of stuff. They would literally open up and share their journey, what they had been through. Maya Angelou was on there. She was amazing, like incredible. And so the reason that lecture series worked was two things. One is that it's story, it's food, and they would sell out, right? People would clamor to be part of those events. And the second reason it worked, the producer told me this. I said, like, why don't you have men speakers? Because I'm trying to be all like, equal and pretend I'm not a raging feminist that I was. And he said, well, it won't work because basically the formula was that the woman who was being featured would tell her story, and then audience members would ask them questions, get up at the mic and go, ask them something more that they wanted to know about them or something like that. And he said the second thing is that men don't ask questions. This is not a judgment. It's just a fact. It is a fact. In fact, try to train somebody. That's, I think, why the majority of my coaching training students are women. I have had men, and they've been amazing. And but it's harder for them because the coaching that I do, it's all question based. that it's all questions, because why? The subject is the unconscious. And if you don't approach it with questions, then you'll approach it like a killdozer. One of my admins yesterday made a lot of killdozer jokes. So if you like killdozers, and my son does, then come on over to the House of Free Will. We got just a pile of them. He was on fire yesterday. And you don't want to be a killdozer in somebody's unconscious, right? That's just, unfortunately, it can set them back. It can literally injure them. It can be abuse, even though you're not intending abuse at all. So it's all done with questions. And there's an expression, you might have heard me say it before, even last week on the King Hero's Journey with Roy and those guys. I said how, an egg, when you crack it from the inside, that's the bird taking life. That's the bird birthing. But if you crack that egg from the outside, it's death, right? Because that will be an untimely, it's got to come from within. So this is why we ask questions, and that's why a men's lecture series wasn't going to work, according to that producer. And is that interesting, Dawn? Are men programmed not to ask questions, or is it just a thing? I would hazard to say it's just a thing, that women are more wired for questions. We're more receptive. We're more passive. That's the feminine. And men are more, like they're the ones who put the stuff out. So I've seen this many times. If say a man could get up and ask a question at Confluence where we were, they were often had questions for the speakers. So they would bring the mic out and people would line up, and you could see it. It was like clockwork. When the men got up, they would make a big, long statement and wait to see if the speaker agreed with them or not. Whereas a woman more often can go, hey, I'm wondering about this. And then, and want to know. So this is no judgment, but it is definitely a cultural phenomena, or not even a cultural phenomena. I think it spans cultures, but it might, I can't say without a shadow of a doubt if that's actually true, that it is entirely cross-cultural. So yeah, good question though, Dawn. Yeah, I'm curious. I think it's a man thing. I think it's part of nature. And so there are times for making statements, but if you want questions, then don't ask a man. And I never do say that. And Emil is saying that, if you're up the food chain and that egg is food for you, then it's death to the egg, but it's life for you. So, yep. But what did you say? I'm just paraphrasing. Then it's not death unless your mind is purely linear. Right, exactly. So if you see the whole cycle of life, then it's not death. So good point. Yep. Notice that Emil did not ask a question. And I'm just bugging you. As for men asking questions, they do, maybe internally, but questioning is part of the invention and innovation. Very good. Very good. Lori Lane said, you didn't know what to say because it wasn't your truth. When you're standing in your truth, you know what to say. I disagree. Sometimes there's just no words for what there is. Sometimes I just shake my head. There's just no words. So no, in fact, it was exactly the opposite, Lori. When I didn't stand in my truth of just saying I don't know what to say, I made shit up. I found words, because you can find words through, there's all kinds of mechanisms and places, and you might say personalities, aspects, false versions and identities of ourselves. And boy, they got stories, they got words. There's no end. Like people were shocked that I couldn't find words. So yeah, it's in my experience the other way around. And Maya Love, I haven't heard of it. Is Maya here? And I'm not seeing her for some reason. I miss Maya. But very good. Let me just see if there was anything I wanted to talk about, say in back to the world of business and business coaching. One of the things that I've helped people to create over the years is a signature story. That it is something that, again, if you just see somebody as the current version of themselves, and they're skilled in this way, and they're doing this kind of work, and they're helping people in that way, at least that's been more relevant in my world. But say you get up and and hear them speak without some sense of where they've come from, their hero's journey, right? Like the twists and the turns and the obstacles and the challenges and the near-death experiences and the facing death again and having to die actually maybe once or twice or 3 times on the hero's journey. And then never mind, when you overcome, you're going to get to the end and there's still a major task, a very formidable task of bringing that elixir home. And if you just go right to bringing the elixir home, it's going to look fake and gay, and people won't be able to relate to it. They won't find, and here's the kicker with the story, a really, truly genuine, authentic story, you can find yourself in it. Why? Because we're all in the same story. It's all the hero's journey. You're either accepting the call or you're refusing the call, or you're somewhere along the line. And when you can find yourself in somebody else's story, it can be absolutely amazing. You know, I often tell this story. I'm going to tell it again, that I have a girlfriend who went through a horrendous divorce. Our kids were about the same age at the time, so we were spending a lot of time together. I kept hearing her story of woe, how this like awful man was, I don't mean man that he's awful, and please don't, you know, I'm not there at all, but he was an awful man. He just was. He got fired from every single lawyer that he used to attack her and the child with. And he would just keep going back and finding the next scumbag that would take his money to keep abusing them through the courts. And I watched this and I heard these stories on a regular basis, and it taught me that it was a cautionary tale. It taught me I'm not going to be her. I'm not going to be in that level of conflict with my son's dad. No matter how much I feel right, there was a time when I could have, you know, flipped out and gone legal, and you know, like I was in the right to do that. But when I saw her story, it was so profound, and it made me take another path, and a much higher path. It's called inner work, right? If you can't change something on the outside of yourself, change here, and it will change. Things will change, and they did. No, thank God I didn't blow up that guy's house like I wanted to, and I didn't take him to court like I wanted to, and I didn't defame him like I wanted to, and just all the things that I didn't do. I like can fall on my knees in gratitude that this woman was brave enough to tell me and let me into her life and show me the hell she was going through. And I was, through her story, able to not have that story. How powerful is that? And if there's anybody out there that has a story like that, you know, your life could, my life is a cautionary tale too. I got sick with a stage 4 lymphoma instead of leaving the life that was wrong with me for me. It was wrong with me too. So does everybody need to get so incredibly sick before they discover how out of alignment they are and start making changes? No. So people can learn that through me. They hear, oh, she had to go off the deep end and nearly die and fight for her life for 3 years. I don't have to do that. I can realize I'm out of alignment now and start doing the work to get back into alignment, right? So this is the power of story. This is what we can do for each other, and the medicine that can be provided. And so, yeah. Yeah, and this is good. I like this, Jillian. If there's no value in the story, so there's always value in the story. The story is the story, but the question is there value for the other person? So have you ever had somebody that came and barfed their story on you and left you traumatized by it, or, you know, really sad for them, or all of that kind of thing? And friends do that for each other, or family does that for each other. And it's just, you know, so that can be part of life. But if I was to say I was feeling like really bad the other day and I wanted to come and tell you guys all the story, that's a bad example, but say I went through something maybe use the situation with my ex when we were in high conflict. And then I came out in the public on social media, on live streams or whatever, and I told the story. Now, the story would have been not very good. It would have been the maligning. It would have been my victim story. It would have been my ferocious killdozer that wanted to just, destroy something at the time. Now, would that have been useful to anyone in my audience? No. They would have probably watched with their popcorn, eating like, oh, Beth's losing it, right? Does anybody watch influencers that are losing it? And then you watch for the almost entertainment value of it. Like, I wonder what weird thing they're gonna do or say, or that kind of thing. It doesn't compel me anymore. But so here's the bottom line that I will always ask myself: will it serve anybody for me to come and tell my sad story right now? The answer is often no, because I haven't had the solution yet. I haven't overcome the challenge. Now, by the time the challenge is overcome, look at me, I'm telling the story. But this was thanks to Kylie Slavic, that if you tell a story that hasn't resolved, you're actually going to be traumatizing the people. So the value is how I look at it from their perspective. Can they learn? Can they grow? Can they get something out of this? Will it benefit them? Or is this just me catharting and needing to barf my story? Well, then there's probably a better place for that. A coach, the best friend, the confidant, then that might not be the story that you go public with. And yeah, there are parts of a story that just, I was in a way getting this feeling. Now, this is pure conjecture with Micah when we recorded his story yesterday. I just knew there's parts that he probably will never tell, and I don't need to know. I've had clients that had been through extreme, very severe abuse, unspeakable. I'll never tell their stories, never. And not just for their privacy, although that's very important to me and important to them, of course. But I know that it won't help anybody. It will just make them feel terrible and have bad things in their mind that they'll have to deprogram from. So yeah, it can be very triggering. And that's the hard part for people who've been through a great deal of abuse, is that it's almost like perpetrators know that if you go out with your story, then it's going to create a very strange relationship. It's really hideous how that can work. Yeah, the triggers. People get triggered, and people couldn't even be around me when I was sick, for example. It triggered them. Just being sick. I hadn't become well yet, so they couldn't be around me. They couldn't be my friends anymore. A lot of people pulled away in those days. And Lori said it took me a bit to ask questions instead of making statements and blowing people up. Good for you. That's amazing. And the stories that are worth sharing have run their course and come through the other side. It's again where there's a resolution, right? Every story has to have an ending. I was joking today how I don't finish most books. These are the first books I'm gonna finish, and it's partly because if it's a good book, I don't want the story to end. I want the story to go on and on. And if it's a bad book, I don't want to read it because it's like, what's the point? Not that there's a bad book, or it's just like I'm not getting anything out of it too. Anne said this content is next level potent for me. Good. Storytelling has always been so intriguing, so potent. Yeah, this is helping her to get such clarity and way more curiosity. Amazing. That's so beautiful. Yeah. And the story is an art form, right? It is definitely a craft. It's not you can't discount stories among the arts. It is really, really brilliant. Some people go into professional storytelling, and then it can get a little fake and gay. I remember that community I went to, some storytelling events, and it was all like the left wing woke people and kind of dissociated from real life and in general, and that, like, but that's their jam. They're having fun. That's good. There are a lot of really beautiful stories that can be told. I'm not the best one to remember the mythology. I remember my own mythologies, but I'll remember snippets of little stories. Like, here's one of my favorite stories. This one I can tell you in 2 minutes or less. And I believe it's a story out of India that might have been somewhere in the Vedas. And there was a person, maybe a man or a woman, I don't remember, and they were looking for God. And they were going door to door looking for God. And they would go to the first door and knock, knock, knock. Is God here? And they'd say, no, God isn't here. So close the door, go down, go to the next house, knock, knock, knock. Is God here? Nope, sorry, God's not home. God's not here. Close the door, and tirelessly, day after day after day, pounding the pavement, knocking on all the doors. Is God here? Is God here? And then one day he comes to a house and he knocks on the door like he always did. And he opened the door and asked, is God there? And then God says, yes, right at your service, I'm here. And what did he do? He closed the door and he kept walking and he kept knocking. It was like he found God, but it's like he didn't find God. It's like he was, this isn't the droid you're looking for kind of experience, but in a dissociation kind of a way. Bad metaphor, but yeah, like just phased out. Literally, God answers the door. I'm here. Here I am, right? And I was like, I'll just, because they can be, and I think the punchline of this story is being so in the groove of searching and never finding. This can be a very big habit for people. So that's how you ruin a good story, is by telling the punchline or explaining the punchline rather than the story speaking for itself. So I just did that. And then you found a lot of value in hearing strong survivor stories, especially where there are aspects that prompt memories or reduce a sense of it was only me. I mean, this is the thing, right? There's suffering and then there's suffering alone. And these two are formidable. So that's one of the reasons that it is so incredibly powerful to tell your story. As soon as you tell your story, 1,000 people are going to show up to tell you they can relate to it. They went through that. They know what that felt like, or, thank you for sharing that. I had no idea I even could relate to it. It's very connective, telling your story in a skillful way where it's actually going to bring benefit to others. So yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. And we're all going through everything. We may not have been through the most extreme kind of things. And, it doesn't actually matter where story's concerned, that when I tell my story about having a stage 4 lymphoma and going through, reams of the hope against hope that natural medicine was going to heal me, it really hurt me actually. And then the second level hope against hope of going into all conventional treatments, which really hurt me. And so when people hear that story, it's not because they also had cancer, or they also had a lymphoma, or they also had a go with natural and conventional medicine. It's the transformation itself that speaks. So we all know about falling down. We all know about crashing, right? Kings crash. That's actually part of the King Hero's journey in this channel that we're on right now. That is the way of kings. It's when you're in a place of being a king, and maybe you have a kingdom, however big or small, you have a lot of responsibility and you have a lot to lose, and then you fall down from that and the king crashes and burns, then that is universal, right? And even if you're not in the place of being at the king, but you're falling down at other places on the journey, even as a child, well, children know about falling down, don't they? And the rebel knows about falling down because people are trying to fall them down. And the warrior knows about falling down because they're scared to feel. That might be, say, like more of a man warrior, or the woman who's scared to build anything and like take a chance to put something out there. And I could go through that whole thing, but I was just interrupting myself and my thoughts and going in a few different directions at one time. So forgive me. I thought of Roy Wooten and I can't even remember why now. So there you go. Yeah, the story really is something. It is food. Back to that. You can watch that for yourself now and just see when you're hungry for story, where do you go? Are you looking for the junk food or defaulting to the junk food or the fear porn or letting somebody, sometimes we have people in our life that tell us their story in circles and they're like even re-traumatizing themselves and they're traumatizing you. And, does there need to be some kind of boundary around that? Are there stories you can tell that would be empowering where you overcame? Right? This is amazing. People need to hear that, especially that are stuck in a place where they're not overcoming and they don't think they can. This is something this last week has presented a number of scenarios in people's lives around me and in a micro way with mine. And it's hitting that impossible. Like where it literally seems impossible. It seems like this is the end. There's no way forward for one reason or another. And then to hear somebody how they overcame, this can literally save their life. Not to say that you should be a rescuer and save people's lives, but that's how powerful story can be. So never discount your own story. Tell your story. It doesn't matter if it has life and death scenarios, even the most mundane story, when it's told authentically and it seems like just normal life, this is also very transformational because we all more or less have the same story. We all have the hero's journey. We're all in the same task. We're all being tasked in the same way. All right. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. And I don't know if I got to all the points, but I think I got a lot of them. Just have a quick look here, see if there's anything that I'll get off and I'll go, damn it. I wish I had talked about, yeah, we talked about that. And yeah, so maybe here's a really good ending point too, is just that when I first started working with archetypes, it was one at a time. It was a lot of piecemeal. I was able to actually have a great deal of success recovering the shadow of one archetype. And but in that time, it was like archetype soup for me, like kind of melange, just like throwing the archetypes in. And when the whole mermaid archetype thing came and I broke it down, it was soup. And then, after my dad died, it was still soup. But by the time my mom passed away, that's when I started to realize, no, it's not just soup. There's actually meaningful order here. And the structure of story, if it's a real story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a resolution of some kind, then the story is going to bring great meaning. And this is the part that people are starving for. This is like if they're hungry for story, they're starving for meaning. And that's what it can give us. So if you're looking for greater meaning in your life through story and you want to hear Micah Eller's story, please do put up your hand. Email me, beth@bethmartins.com. Come and check in on Telegram with me. There's the King Hero chat and channel. And I could probably really quickly grab some links for that. That's a good way to connect. And then once we're connected on Telegram, you can always private message me. I never mind that. We do have 2 private groups with the House of Free Will for members only. I love the House of Free Will members. Shout out to you. You guys are exceptional. The quality of people in there, it's like really amazing that we're not a bunch of babies in there, or, for the most part. This is the King Hero chat. I won't share the private channels because you do need to be a member. If you would like to be a member, if you would like to hear more about it, I guess to begin with, since maybe you don't know what it's about, it's all solutions-based, it's education-based, it's relationship-based, meaning that we're there to create relationships that can stand the test of time and bull crap going on in the world. So I will grab a link to the application to the House of Free Will. I've been having a number of members joining recently through the Love Your Liver program, which is really awesome. I'm doing, if you're not familiar with Garrett Smith's work, then you definitely, if you have any health questions or issues, I do highly recommend that. So I'm giving deprogramming sessions once a week, every single Wednesday in his forum, deprogramming your health in particular, because I've got a lot of experience with that and how to use the tools to help you along the way while you're suffering, to reduce symptoms, to maybe find root causes of why you're sick, or at least be able to not add suffering unnecessarily. And so if you wanted to apply to be the in the House of Free Will, that's where I'm sharing the recordings of these sessions. So even if you're not a member of Love Your Liver, if you are a member of the House of Free Will, you could still get access in our Love Your Liver study group. I know that's a lot of details. People kind of glaze over with that. And then there's the Telegram channels, and you are very welcome, Jillian. Much appreciated. And Anne, I'm so glad you could make it and be here. Very good. And like Jackie always holds down the fort here, asking you to like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you feel like there was anything helpful and useful for you in today's stream or any other of these Beth of Fresh Air or King Hero's Journey podcast, I said it wrong myself, then it does help me a lot if you feel to share to other people. And so one last thing I'll say is that Micah and I are planning a new course, and the title of it is Self-Remembering with Archetypes. So we're just getting that together. It's going to be 8 workshops in a row as part of a package, going through the archetypes of the hero's journey, using role playing to bring those archetypal expressions up and out the mouth, and in these improv sessions that are for, of course, they're extremely good at getting you to know yourself. And the side effect is that they're fun. They're super fun, right? And we're all watching that. There's usually one pair going at one time, and sometimes the peals of laughter is just insane. Like I'm literally crying and laughing at the same time. So it's very dynamic, and it is also hard work, and you need to know how. Not need to know how, but you need to have a hunger for self-knowledge and self-remembering. So we'll be sharing more about that in the future. And in the meantime, you can hear Micah's story by connecting with me by email or anywhere else. Alrighty, so I'm going to sing you out with one of my tunes here. Trying to remember which one it is. Oh, my true guide. I think it's called Upadrashta. It's on a recording called Vijaya Living Knowledge. This is the one not Beth Martin's recording on iTunes and Spotify. It's spelled Vijaya if you're looking for this exact album, I believe. And there's 3 other ones under Beth Martin's if you're ever wanting to play those for yourself. There's a good collection of lullabies. There's one that's super dynamic and quite orchestrated, done by Liam's dad. Actually, 2 of them are done by Liam's dad, who's extremely talented in studio work and musician. He played all the instruments on one of them. And I think that's all. So I love you guys. I appreciate you coming out. Muchas gracias to you, Anne, as well. All right, let's see.
Oh, my true guide, Lord and supporter of all, forever free from identity. Be well, I'm dwelling in you. Be well, I am dwelling in you. Drashta Numanta Shivarta Yasmin Purusha